Hello and welcome back. We are jumping straight into the deep end today with a submission that is frankly a bit of a light.
Oh, absolutely. This is one of those pieces that really makes you think.
It's a commentary script, and it's analyzing Jennette McCurdy's allegations against the iCarly writer Paul Glaser. And the author here takes a very, very hard stance.
A very specific stance, yeah.
They're arguing that because McCurdy was 18, because there's no, smoking gun timeline of contact before then, the term grooming is just wrong.
Factually inaccurate is the claim.
Exact. And they go on to suggest she's rewriting history for a paycheck and that Glaser is too much of a loser to be a real predator. So there's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, a lot. I think this is one of those scripts where the author is so focused on winning like a technical debate that they might be losing the bigger argument.
Right. So let's start with the fact. The author is obsessed, and I mean almost totally focused on the dictionary definition of The core argument is just, she was 18, legally an adult, therefore this wasn't grooming. Case closed.
It's like the strict constitutionalist approach to relationships. And, I get the instinct. Words have meanings.
Sure.
If you accuse someone of a crime, the timeline matters. But here's the trap the author falls into. They're using a legal defense for what is really a moral and a psychological issue.
That's a great way to put it. It feels like they're arguing in a courtroom, but the audience is sitting in like a therapist's office.
Exactly. In the script, it actually trips over itself. While it's yelling it's not grooming, the author explicitly writes that the relationship was, what was it?
An HR violation.
Right, an HR violation, that it was gross, and that a man in his 30s shouldn't be dating a subordinate.
I noticed that too. It creates this really weird dissonance. It's like saying, he definitely shouldn't have done it. It was an abuse of his position, totally unethical. But don't you dare call it grooming.
Right. If you admit it's an HR violation, you are admitting there's a power imbalance. HR policies exist for that exact reason, because a boss and a subordinate can't have an equal relationship.
So they've already conceded the core point.
They've conceded that the dynamic was exploitative, but then they spend the next 5 minutes just fighting over the specific label for that exploitation.
It's fighting the dictionary rather than the reality of the situation. So if we're giving feedback, how do they fix this? Because they clearly don't believe the grooming label fits.
I think they need to pivot from a semantic argument to a structural one.
Okay.
So instead of just saying, I don't buy grooming and, dropping the mic, they need to explore why it was an HR violation. Don't just wave it away. Lean into that. Talk about how a scriptwriter in his mid-30s dating an 18-year-old talent, that creates an inherent pressure to comply.
That's the so what factor.
Exactly. It's not just about her age. It's about the paycheck. It's about screen time. It's about her entire career trajectory. Even if she's 18 and 1 day old, if he holds the pen that decides if her character gets a good joke or gets cut from a scene, she is not free.
And the author just ignores all of that economic coercion. Focus on the birthday.
Completely.
Which actually, that brings us to the whole maturity argument in the script. This part really, really jumped out at me. The text notes that McCurdy was told she was mature for her age by Glaser. The author flags this as a classic red flag.
Which it is. It is a huge red flag.
But then they pivot to calling her an immature 18-year-old who didn't know any better. It feels like the author is mocking her for believing the lie instead of blaming Glaser for telling it.
You've really hit on something crucial there. The script is currently framing her immaturity as like a character flaw, rather than the vulnerability that Glaser targeted.
It's kind of victim-blaming adjacent, isn't it?
It is. But let's play devil's advocate for the author for a second. The author sees an 18-year-old making bad decisions and says, she's an adult, she made a choice. The nuance they're missing is why she made that choice.
Right.
Telling a teenager you're so mature for your age isn't a compliment. It's an isolation tactic. It separates them from their peers. It makes them feel like they belong in the adult world, which they don't.
So the feedback here is to shift the agents.
Precisely. The author needs to reconcile these two ideas. She was an immature 18-year-old, and he used the concept of maturity to manipulate her. Don't mock the victim for falling for the trick. Analyze the mechanism of the trick itself. That makes for a much smarter critique than just calling her naive.
Speaking of mocking the victim, we have to talk about the tone.
There's a very cynical thread running through this whole submission. The author frames McCurdy's current allegations as a rewrite of history, because back in 2015, she actually defended Glaser.
This is the script's big gotcha moment. She said X in 2015, now she says Y, therefore she must be lying for money.
And they use the phrase, and this is a direct quote, laughing her way to the bank.
Ugh, yeah. That phrase has to go, immediately.
Why? I mean, obviously it's harsh, but why is it bad writing?
Because it's lazy. It assumes malice where psychology offers a much, much better explanation. It completely ignores how trauma processing works.
Okay.
Look, if you are in an abusive or exploitative relationship, you often defend the person. You rationalize it. You have to, just to survive it. It's often called fawning, or it's a variation of Stockholm Syndrome.
So pointing out that she defended him back in 2015 isn't the slam dunk the author thinks it is.
Not at all. In fact, her defending him in 2015 actually supports the narrative that she was under his psychological control. The author is treating human memory and trauma like it's a contract dispute. You signed on the dotted line here, so you can't feel this way later.
It just alienates any listener who has even a basic understanding of psychology. It makes the author sound more like a bully than a critic.
And it minimizes all the context. The script mentions her mother's death, her eating disorders, but then it reduces her entire memoir to just a profit venture. You can't have it both ways. You can't acknowledge the tragedy and then cynically claim she's just monetizing it for fun.
There's a specific line where the author mocks McCurdy for saying Glaser used a Jedi mind trick on her to make her feel like she was the one in power.
Right. The author calls her, I think the word was idiot or not that bright, for ever thinking she was in charge.
And that is a fundamental misunderstanding of manipulation. The best con artists, the best manipulators, they always make the mark feel like they're the one pulling the string. It's not about stupidity, it's by design.
So how do we suggest fixing this section?
Adopt a posture of curiosity. Instead of saying, she's changing her story, what a liar, ask, why did she feel the need to defend him then? What changed in her life, maybe therapy, maybe just distance, that allowed her to finally see the Jedi mind trick for what it was? That is a fascinating discussion.
Right. Calling someone laughing to the bank is a cheap shot. It just closes the door on discussion, whereas we want to open it. Fire script.
The author paints Paul Glaser not as a predator, but as a pathetic loser. He lived with his parents or his girlfriend. He was an alcoholic. He wasn't some evil mastermind. The author basically argues, look at this guy. He's a dumbass. He couldn't possibly be grooming anyone.
Which assumes that you have to be Hannibal Lecter, you be an abuser. It assumes that coercion requires like a high intelligence. It just doesn't.
The text mentions a detail that I think completely flips this argument on its head, but the author just misses it. Glaser left his live-in girlfriend to be with McCurdy, and this is the real kicker, he had McCurdy, the 18-year-old, buy the hotel room for them.
And the author cites this as proof that he's just a bum.
Right. They're like, look at this loser. He can't even pay for his own room.
But stop and think about that dynamic. You have a man in his 30s making an 18-year-old girl pay for his housing. That isn't just being a loser. That is parasitic. That's financial exploitation.
That's the reframe.
Exactly. The helplessness isn't a bug. It's a feature. It's the classic wounded bird routine. Oh, I have nowhere to go. My girlfriend kicked me out because of our love. I need you to take care of me. That hooks a victim's empathy. It makes the victim feel responsible for the abuser.
So the author is looking at the helplessness and seeing incompetent, but they should be looking at it and seeing a trap.
Yes. If you frame him as a parasite rather than a loser, the whole argument changes. It becomes much more sinister. The author says he sounds like a dumbass. Well, maybe, but he was a dumbass who successfully got a teenage millionaire to fund his life and keep his secrets.
That's dangerous.
That's incredibly dangerous. It creates a much more robust profile of the relationship. It's not about him being a genius. It's about him being a leech.
And that fits the HR violation point from earlier.
Perfectly. He used his proximity to extract resources, emotional and financial, from a subordinate. That is the definition of exploitation, even if he doesn't fit the criminal mastermind suit.
Okay, let's slide over to the literary criticism segment because the author takes a pretty big detour to trash McCurdy's new novel, Half His Age.
This felt like such a distraction to me.
The author reads the blurb about characters named Waldo and Mr. Corg and basically says, this sounds like a badly written romance novel. And the implication is, what? Because her fiction is bad, her real-life trauma claims are suspect?
Which logically holds no water whatsoever. You can be a terrible writer and still be a victim of abuse.
The author also suggests she wrote it as fiction to get legal immunity.
That's just speculative legal advice, which is always risky. But more importantly, it misses the artistic point.
I mean, why do people write fiction about real events?
To tell the truth without being bound by all the facts.
Exactly. A memoir is about dates and times, the very things the author is attacking her on with the grooming definition. But fiction? Fiction is about emotional truth. Maybe she chose a novel because it allowed her to explore the feeling of the relationship, the Jedi mind trick, the confusion, the maturity, in a way a strict autobiography just wouldn't.
It goes back to that rewriting history complaint. The author sees fiction as a dot.
And we should encourage them to see it as a lens.
And on the bad writing point, the author mocks the description of the character being ravenous, horny, blunt.
Again, look at those words. Ravenous, horny, blunt. If those are the words an 18-year-old character is using to describe herself, what does that tell us about her internal state?
Yeah.
It sounds like someone desperate for validation, someone chaotic. Instead of just mocking the adjectives, analyze them. What do they reveal about the victim's mindset at the time?
So decouple the literary critique from the credibility of the allegation. Critique the book if you want, but don't use that as evidence that the abuse didn't happen.
Right. It just weakens the main argument because it feels petty. It feels like we've stopped analyzing the case and we've started writing a Yelp review.
Finally, I want to talk about the analogy, because the author really swings for the fences.
Oh boy.
The Founding Fathers.
Yes, the script compares judging Glaser's past actions to judging the Founding Fathers for owning slaves. The whole, it was a different time, morals have changed thing.
It is a massive overreach. It's bringing a cannon to a knife fight.
It just feels off because the scale is all wrong. We're talking about a Nickelodeon soundstage in 2010, not a plantation in 1776. The moral landscape has not shifted that much in 10 years. We knew in 2010 that dating your teenage employee was wrong.
It introduces this massive political and historical baggage that just distracts the listener. Instead of thinking about Jennette McCurdy, I'm suddenly thinking about Thomas Jefferson.
And you've lost the audience. The suggestion here is simple. Cut it. Just cut it. If you need an analogy, stick to Hollywood. Stick to the industry.
The author does try to use a Hollywood analogy with Jessica Alba and Mike Weatherly.
Which is better, but it's still flawed. The text argues that because Jessica Alba dated an older co-star and didn't claim abuse, then McCurdy shouldn't either.
That's a false equivalence.
100%. Jessica Alba hasn't claimed abuse. McCurdy has. Every relationship is different. Instead of implying McCurdy should feel like Alba, contrast them. Why was Alba's situation different? Was it the parents? Was it the specific culture at Nickelodeon?
Right. The script even mentions the Dan Snyder era Nickelodeon culture. That is a huge, unique variable.
Exactly. Use the comparison to highlight the specific toxicity of McCurdy's environment, not to dismiss her feelings. Jessica Alba was fine, so you should be too, is just not a valid argument.
So let's wrap this up and bring it all together for the list. We have a script that is trying to counter a very popular narrative. The author wants to say, hey, wait a minute, let's look at the facts.
Which is a valid goal. We need counter-narratives. We absolutely need critical thinking.
But the execution is undermining the intent. By relying on a strict legal definition of grooming while admitting to the HR violations, the argument just eats itself. By attacking McCurdy's rewriting of history with cynicism instead of psychological curiosity, it alienates the audience. And by painting the accused as a loser instead of a parasite, it misses the true nature of the power dynamic.
The golden thread that's missing here is power. If the author rewrites this focusing on power, financial power, emotional power, workplace power, rather than just age and intelligence, this could be a really, really compelling piece of commentary.
Currently, it reads like a defense attorney trying to get a client off on a technicality. It needs to read like a cultural critic analyzing a complex human tragedy.
That's the shift. Less courtroom, more newsroom.
We would love to see a version 2 of this. There is a strong argument buried under all the insults and the semantics.
There really is.
Clear away that debris, focus on the parasitic nature of the relationship, and you'll have something worth listening to.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to empathize with the victim even while you critique their narrative. That's where the real insight lives.
That's it for this critique. Thanks for sending in such a challenging piece. It really got us thinking. Keep writing, keep refining, and we'll catch you on the next